In the theater of congressional oversight, some hearings end with clarity, others end with new questions. And sometimes, a witness returns not to provide answers, but to defend the ones they've already given. What you're about to witness is not a first testimony, it's a second look. A review of what was said before, measured against what has surfaced since. This is the nature of accountability. It doesn't move quickly, but it does move carefully. And today, the careful questions begin again. It's 4:15 in the afternoon. The hearing room feels heavier than it did 3 weeks ago. The same cameras are positioned along the back wall. The same press section is full. But the atmosphere is different now. Something has shifted. Kash Patel sits at the witness table. Same dark suit. Same glass of water. Same folder in front of him. But this time, there are more folders. 3 of them, stacked neatly to his right. He hasn't opened any of them yet. The chairman begins with a procedural statement. He reminds the room that this is a continuation of the previous hearing. He notes that new information has come to the committee's attention. He says the purpose today is clarification, not accusation. Then he yields the floor. Representative Garrett from Ohio goes first. He asks Patel to confirm his current employment status. Patel says he works in the private sector, providing strategic consulting. Garrett asks if that's his only source of income. Patel says yes, primarily. Garrett asks what primarily means. Patel says he occasionally participates in speaking engagements. Garrett asks if those engagements are paid. Patel says some are. Garrett asks how many in the past year. Patel says he'd need to check his records but estimates between 8 and 12. Garrett yield. Representative Silva from Florida asks about Patel's consulting work. She asks which clients he serves. Patel says he can't disclose specific clients due to confidentiality agreements. Silva asks if any of his clients are defense contractors. Patel says some operate in the defense sector. Silva asks if he advises them on government contracts. Patel says he provides general strategic guidance. Silva asks if that guidance includes insights about federal procurement processes. Patel says his advice is based on publicly available information and his prior government experience. Silva asks if his prior government experience gives him an advantage in advising these clients. Patel says experience is always relevant to consulting work. Silva yields. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is sitting in the same position she occupied 3 weeks ago. Third seat from the left. Her notepad is open. She's written 3 lines so far. Her pen is uncapped, resting beside the notepad. She's watching Patel, but her expression reveals nothing. The chairman looks at the roster. He says, the chair recognizes Representative Ocasio-Cortez. OC picks up her pen. She doesn't write immediately. She just holds it, looking at Patel. Then she says, Mr. Patel, thank you for returning. Patel nods. Of course. OC pauses. Then she says, 3 weeks ago, you testified that you left government service in January 2023. Is that correct? Yes. And you began your consulting work immediately after? Within a few weeks? Yes. How many weeks? Patel shifts slightly. I don't recall the exact timeline. Approximately. Perhaps 3 or 4 weeks. OC writes something on her notepad. Then she says, so you started consulting in late January or early February 2023. That sounds correct. And when did you file your financial disclosure form covering your government service? I filed it within the required time frame, which is 30 days after departure, so by late February 2023. Yes. OC sets her pen down. She reaches beside her and picks up a document. It's a single page, printed on official letterhead. She holds it, but doesn't show it to the room yet. She says, I have a copy of your financial disclosure form here. It's dated February 22nd, 2023. Does that sound correct? Patel says, if that's what the form shows, then yes. On this form you disclosed your government salary and your departure date. You did not disclose any other sources of income during your final year of government service. Is that accurate? I disclosed what was required. That's not what I asked. Did you have any other sources of income during your final year of government service? Patel pauses. I may have had minor speaking fees. Were those disclosed? I believe they fell below the reporting threshold. What is the reporting threshold? I'd need to check the specific regulations. It's $5,000. Were your speaking fees below $5,000? Patel doesn't answer immediately. Then he says, I believe they were, yes. AOC writes something. Then she says, how much did you receive in speaking fees during your final year of government service? I don't recall the exact amount. Approximately. Perhaps a few $1,000s. $3,000? $4,000? I'd need to review my records. AOC sets the document down on the table in front of her. Then she says, Mr. Patel, after you left government service and began consulting, did you file quarterly tax estimates? Patel says, I filed all required tax documents. That includes quarterly estimates. Yes. And those estimates are based on projected income. Yes. So in April 2023, when you filed your first quarterly estimate, you projected your consulting income for the year, correct? That's how quarterly estimates work. Yes. AOC picks up another document. This one is thicker, several pages stapled together. She says, I have a document here that shows consulting income reported to the IRS for the 2023 tax year. According to this document, you reported $470,000 in consulting income. Does that sound accurate? Patel's hand moves to the folder in front of him. He doesn't open it. I'd need to verify the exact figure with my accountant. But it's in that range. It could be. $470,000 over 11 months. That's approximately $43,000 per month. Does that sound correct? If the math is correct, yes. AOC writes something on her notepad. The room is quieter now. Representative Garrett is leaning forward. Silva has stopped looking at her phone. AOC says, Mr. Patel, when did you sign your first consulting contract? Patel says, I don't recall the exact date, but it was after you left government service. Yes, in February, possibly, or earlier. Patel pauses. Contracts are sometimes negotiated before they're signed. So you were negotiating consulting contracts while still in government service. Preliminary discussions are not contracts, but you were having discussions. I was preparing for my transition to the private sector. AOC sets her pen down, both hands flat on the table. When did these preliminary discussions begin? Patel says, I don't recall. Was it in December 2022? It may have been. November? I'd need to check my calendar. Do you have your calendar from that period? My office maintains records. Can you provide them to this committee? Patel looks at the chairman. The chairman looks back but says nothing. Patel turns back to AOC. I'd need to consult with counsel about what can be shared. AOC picks up her pen again. She writes one line. Then she says, Mr. Patel, during your final 3 months of government service, did you attend any meetings with representatives from companies that later became your consulting clients? The question hangs in the air. Patel's hand is on the folder now, not opening it, just touching it. He says, I attended many meetings in my official capacity. That's not what I asked. Did any of those meetings involve companies that later hired you as a consultant? I met with many private sector representatives. Did any of them later hire you? Patel doesn't answer immediately. Then he says, I'd need to review the meeting logs. But it's possible. It's possible that some overlap exists. Yes. Akarosi writes something else. Then she says, when you had these meetings in your official capacity, did you disclose that you were in preliminary discussions about future employment? Patel says, I followed all ethics guidelines. Did you disclose it? Ethics guidelines require disclosure under certain circumstances. What circumstances? When there's a direct conflict of interest. And you determined there was no conflict? I consulted with ethics officials. When? During my final months of service. Did you receive written guidance? Patel pauses. I received verbal guidance. From whom? The ethics office. Did you document that guidance? I don't recall. The room is very quiet now. Someone in the back row has stopped taking notes. The press cameras haven't moved. AOC reaches beside her and picks up another document. This one is a single page with a header visible at the top. She says, Mr. Patel, I have a meeting log from December 15, 2022. It shows you attended a briefing with representatives from Sentinel Defense Solutions. Do you remember that meeting? Patel says, I attended many briefings. This one specifically. I'd need to see the log to refresh my memory. AOC holds up the page. According to this log, the meeting lasted 90 minutes. It was scheduled as a policy briefing on procurement modernization. Do you remember it now? I may have attended that meeting. The log shows 3 attendees from Sentinel Defense Solutions. One of them was Marcus Reeves, their vice president for government relations. Do you know Mr. Reeves? Patel says, I've met many industry representatives. But do you know Marcus Reeves specifically? I may have met him. According to your 2023 consulting income records, Sentinel Defense Solutions was your largest client. They paid you $190,000 in consulting fees. Does that sound correct? Patel's jaw tightens slightly. I'd need to verify the figure, but they were a significant client. They were a client, yes. And you met with their vice president for government relations in December 2022, while you were still in government service. If the log shows that, then yes. Did you discuss your potential future employment with Sentinel during that meeting? No. You're certain. The meeting was about policy. Only policy. Yes. OEC sets the page down. She picks up her pen. She writes 2 lines on her notepad. Then she says, when did you first discuss employment with Sentinel Defense Solutions? Patel says, after I left government service. You had no discussions before that. Not about employment, but you had discussions about policy. In December, yes. And then in February, they became your largest client. They hired me for my expertise. Expertise you demonstrated during the policy briefing in December. Patel doesn't respond. OEC leans back slightly. She's looking at her notepad now. Then she says, Mr. Patel, let me ask about another meeting. On January 10, 2023, you attended a closed-door briefing on classified contract protocols. Is that correct? Patel says, if it was classified, I can't discuss it. I'm not asking about the content. I'm asking if you attended. I may have. The attendance log shows you were present. Then I was present. That was 8 days before you left government service. Yes. Were any private sector representatives at that briefing? I can't discuss classified matters. Were contractors present? Patel pauses. Some briefings include contractor participation. Was this one of them? I'd need to review the specific briefing. AOC picks up another document. This one is marked with a classification header at the top, but the body is redacted. She says, this is the attendance log for that briefing. The names are redacted for security reasons, but it shows 12 attendees. 4 were government officials, 8 were contractors. You were one of the 4 government officials. Do you remember this now? Patel says, if the log shows I was there, then I was there. And 8 contractors were also present. If that's what the log shows. Did any of those contractors later hire you as a consultant? Patel looks at the chairman again. The chairman shifts but doesn't intervene. Patel says, I don't know who the other attendees were. You attended a 90-minute classified briefing with 8 people and you don't remember who they were. The briefing was about protocols, not individuals, but you interacted with them, in a professional capacity. And 8 days later you were no longer in government. Yes. And shortly after that you began consulting for defense contractors. Yes. OOC sets the document down. She writes something on her notepad. The room is completely silent now. The chairman has his hands folded on the table. Representative Garrett is staring at Patel. Silva is staring at AOC. OOC says, Mr. Patel, when you testified 3 weeks ago, you said you had no meetings with potential clients while in government service. Do you remember saying that? Patel says, I said I had no meetings about employment. You said you had no meetings with potential clients. I may have phrased it that way. Was that accurate? I had no meetings where employment was discussed, but you had meetings with companies that later became clients. I had policy meetings with companies that weeks later paid you significant consulting fees. The meetings were about policy, not employment, but the employment followed. Patel doesn't respond. AOC picks up her pen again. She holds it vertically, tip resting on the notepad. Then she says, Mr. Patel, I'd like to introduce another document. She reaches beside her and picks up a thin folder. She opens it and removes a single page. It's an email header, with the body redacted. She says, this is an email dated January 5, 2023. It was sent from your government email address to a personal email address. The subject line reads, Contract Draft for Review. Do you remember sending this email? Patel's hand moves off the folder. Both hands are in his lap now. I'd need to see the full email. The body is redacted due to potential privilege issues. But the header shows it was sent from your government account to an email address registered to a consulting firm called Strategic Advisory Group. Are you familiar with that firm? Yes. What is it? It's a firm I was considering working with. In January 2023. Yes. While you were still in government service. I was preparing for my transition. You were sending contract drafts from your government email. I may have forwarded a document for review. A contract draft. A draft. Yes. For your employment after government service. For potential employment. From your government email account. Patel doesn't respond. AOC sets the page down. She writes one more line on her notepad. Then she looks up and says, Mr. Patel, was that email reviewed by ethics officials before you sent it? Patel says, I don't recall. You don't recall if you asked ethics officials whether it was appropriate to send employment contract drafts from your government email. I don't recall seeking specific guidance on that email. Did you seek general guidance about using government resources for private employment preparation? I followed all applicable rules. That's not what I asked. Did you seek guidance? Patel pauses. I was aware of the rules, but did you ask anyone if what you were doing was appropriate? I used my judgment. OOC leans forward, just slightly. Your judgment was that sending employment contract drafts from a government email account was appropriate. Patel says, I was in transition. You were still in government. I was preparing to leave, but you hadn't left yet. No. The silence stretches. 10 seconds. 15. Patel's hands are still in his lap. His water glass is still full. The folders to his right remain unopened. OOC picks up her pen one final time. She writes something on her notepad. Then she closes it. She places both hands flat on the table and says, Mr. Patel, when you sent that email on January 5th, were you still responsible for making decisions that could affect the companies you were negotiating with? Patel looks at her. His mouth opens slightly, then closes. He looks at the folders beside him, then at the chairman, then back at AOC. He says, I'd like to consult with counsel before answering that question. The chairman says, we can arrange, but AOC interrupts quietly. She says, Mr. Chairman, the question is very simple. I'll rephrase. Mr. Patel, on January 5th, 2023, when you sent that contract draft from your government email, were you simultaneously involved in decisions about contracts or policies that could benefit the companies you were negotiating employment with? The room is frozen. The cameras are still recording. Patel's hands come up from his lap and rest on the table. His eyes are on the unopened folders, and the silence fills the space where an answer should be.